What's going on, guys? Super Insane 18 here, and without Arise Heart gatekeeping the format, I'm here to bring you a Tearlaments deck profile, so let's go ahead and jump on in. After the most recent Forbidden and Limited list, I had a few events coming up, and I was scrambling trying to figure out what I wanted to play in order to kind of counteract Tearlament, and one of my friends who didn't play during that format thought that I was crazy, but if we look at the results, despite not winning, it did take up the most amount of top cut slots at YCS Dortmund, and at all of the events that I have been to, there have been at least 3 or more in the top 8, so this definitely is a deck to be aware of, especially without Arise Heart gatekeeping it. So let's show you guys the build. We are starting things off with a relatively standard Tearlament lineup. We obviously have one of each of our fusing names, the Merly, the Havness, and the Shiren. These are limited to 1, otherwise you would play more. We have 2 copies of Rhino Heart. I feel like 3 just gets a little bit too bricky. It's not something that you want to mill multiple copies of. It's not something that you really want to open multiple copies of, so 2 really does feel like the sweet spot. We have 3 copies of our Tearlaments Kashtira. This card is absolutely incredible. Not only can you just summon it and mill cards, but it itself mills cards if it is milled as well. And to pair with the Tearlaments Kashtira, we have 2 copies of Kashtira Fenrir in order to search it. Now, this does get a little bit better if you're playing a King of the Swamp variant, which I am going to be showing you guys in a couple of days, so make sure you are subscribed with notifications on if you want to see that variant. The reason it is a little bit better in that variant is because you can then go ahead and overlay these into a Draco Sack and do the whole Cherubini combo, which I will show you guys at that video, but it is still really good in this version because at worst case scenario, it is just an additional interruption on your end board. Of course, we have our Ishizu cards, we have our 2 Millers in the Agido and the Kelbeck, and then we have our 2 Shufflers in the Keldo and the Medora. Again, they are limited to 1, otherwise you would play more. Then we have our 2 copies of Diviner of the Herald. This is probably the best normal summon in the deck, being able to send any of those Ishizu cards to get the ball rolling. Either you can send the Millers if you have to mill cards, but if you have a lot of cards that you can mill with already, you can go ahead and send the Shufflers for additional interruption. We are on 3 copies of Danger Nessie. This is just a really good discard and draw engine, but not just that, it does actually synergize with the deck being an Aqua, meaning that you are able to use it as one of the materials for Kaleido Heart, and we do have our 1 copy of Mothman to pair with it. This is the best one to play because if it's discarded, you can draw and discard one, meaning you'll be able to activate any of your discard effects, but not just that, it is level 4, meaning that you are able to do something like go for an Abyss Dweller. Next up, we have our 2 copies of the Destiny Hero Malicious and the 1 copy of Denier. This is for the new strategy that people are playing in the extra deck with the Destiny Hero Dangerous. You are able to just kind of spam the field with these cards, and they are level 6s, meaning that you are able to make a Beatrice as well. We have our 1 copy of Shadal Beast. This is just for a draw. I'm not even playing Winda in this version of the deck. We just want to be able to draw, and because it is a dark with a different attribute, that means we are able to do something like Mud Dragon. Then we have our 1 copy of Shyama. This card is actually really cool, and part of the reason I really wanted to bring you guys this deck profile, I think that this tech in this deck is absolutely crazy. Not only are you able to just maybe like set one of your tier monsters face down and then pop it to summon the Shyama, which will of course activate your Tearlament monster, but the coolest part about it is that Kaleido Heart is a fiend, meaning that you can actually use this to send the Kaleido Heart, or rather destroy the Kaleido Heart to summon it, and then the Kaleido Heart will activate Engrave to resummon itself and send another Tearlament name, meaning that it acts as a pseudo-polymerization because you will get another fusion effect as long as you're able to put the Kaleido Heart on field with this in the graveyard. We have our 1 copy of Destrudo rounding out the monsters. This is mostly just for Baron, being able to summon it out as a level 3 by targeting any of your level 4s and then using it in tandem with one of your Kashtira names to make a Baron. Is just a really free Omni Negate, so yeah. Onto these spells, we have 3 copies of the field spell, Primeval Planet Perloreno. Obviously, this is our Searcher, and it's additional interruption anytime a Tearlament is shuffled back. We have our 1 copy of the Pressured Planet Wraithoth. This is to be able to search either the Fenrir or the Tearlaments Kashtira, so just a little bit of added consistency. We have our 2 copies of Tearlaments Scream. I don't really want to play 3 because, again, it's one of those things that you don't want to mill multiple copies of, so it just kind of feels a little bit bricky at 3. 2 has been feeling like the perfect number in my testing. We have our 1 copy of Heartbeat. Not only is this just spell and trap removal, which I think is very important for this format, but it's also recursion as well if it's sent to grave by card effect. Onto the one-ofs finishing up the spells, we have one copy of Card Destruction. This card is just crazy. Not only will it give you knowledge of what your opponent's playing, but it will also activate all of the effects that you have when they are sent to grave, and refill your hand as well. We have our one copy of Foolish Burial, because why wouldn't you play it? This card can pretty much do anything you want in the deck. And then our one copy of Foolish Burial Goods. Between the Scream and the Heartbeat and the Sully and the Meta Noise and even the Trivy Karma that we are playing, this card can pretty much do anything you want in the game as well, very similar to the Foolish Burial, which brings us on to all of those cards that I just mentioned. We are playing our 2 copies of Sully. Again, you don't want to mill multiple copies, you don't want to open multiple copies, so 2 feels like the correct number. We have our 1 copy of the Meta Noise, and finishing it off, our 1 copy of Trivy Karma. That is the main deck at 40 cards. Let's show you guys the extra. And before we get into the extra, I do want to remind you guys about the Trick or Tear Halloween playmat featuring all of these Tearlament monsters dressed up as iconic cards that have seen play within their deck. Make sure you get yours before October 20th because the price will be raising once it is an official release. The pre-order is available now on my website, insanetcg.com. Go ahead and get yours now. Now, the Tearlament extra deck is something that is a little strange because you would think that it would be very heavy on the fusions, being a fusion-based deck, but we are actually only playing 5 fusion monsters, so let's show you guys what they are. We have our Mud Dragon of the Swamp. This is just one of the most practical ways into any of our rank 4s, most importantly Dweller, but we are also on some other cards where this card will matter, being that it is a water. We have our 1 copy of the Destiny Hero Dangerous. Again, this is for that kind of just additional extra push and ability to make Beatrice. We have our 1 copy of Garura Wings of Resonant Life. Not only is this just really good for drawing cards, but the side deck will contain Super Poly as well, meaning that between this and Mud Dragon, we pretty much have everything covered. We have our 1 copy of Predaplant Dragostapelia. Honestly, I don't find myself going into this all that much. I've been kind of back and forth between this and Winda since we are playing the 1 copy of Beast, but this just kind of has more of a use case, honestly, so it's that for now, but it could potentially change. And then the final fusion is the 1 copy of Tearlament's Kaleido Heart. This is just pretty much the boss monster at this point. You're able to spin cards, you're able to fuse, you're able to send it off something like Sully. It's just a really crazy card, so you have to play it. We are not playing the Roll Callous because this is not the King of the Swamp version. Again, if you want to see that version, it will be coming later this week, so make sure you guys are subscribed with notifications on so you know when I post that. We have our 1 copy of Baron de Fleur. This is relatively easy to make, not only with the Destrudo line that I outlined earlier, but you can also make this with Diviner, because when Diviner sends one of your Ishizu cards, it does become a level 6 tuner, so putting any other level 4 on board means that you're able to make your Baron. On to the XYZs, obviously we have our Abyss Dweller. This card is just insane for the format, not only for the mirror match, but being able to just completely ruin Unchained's day as well. Really important card that absolutely has to be played, especially because in the side deck we have the counter trap Tearlament's Crime, meaning that we can pretty much protect our Dweller anyway. There is a way out of it, and maybe I'll go over that at a different time, but it's really, really strong. We have our 1 copy of Totally Awesome and our 1 copy of Bahamut Shark. This is why it is important that Mud Dragon is a water, because you need 2 waters in order to make this, and this just adds an additional Omni Negate onto your end board. But not just that, when you use the Omni Negate, you are able to recur resources because there are a lot of waters in the main deck. We have our 1 copy of Time Thief Redoer. This is absolutely mandatory because it is the only way to resolve the Sheeran effect if you are forced to summon it. In some instances, you have to summon the Sheeran for the additional mills in order to get your play started, and if you do that, you just end up with a Sheeran on board that you would have no other way of getting out of. Maybe you could make a Baron and pop it, but it's much easier to overlay into the Redoer. Redoer's detach is not a cost, it is effect, meaning that the Shiren will activate if detached for the effect of Time Thief Redoer. And finishing up the XYZs, we have our 1 copy of Beatrice. This can just send any card in our deck, so whatever we need, this card will get us there. On to the Link monsters, we have 3 Link 2s. We have our Cross Sheep, which is just basic extension. We have our Dark the Dark Charmer Gloomy. This is because a lot of decks right now are playing dark monsters, so it's just a way to put something additional onto our board. We have our 1 copy of Sprite Sprind. This is a way to be able to guarantee we can send our Merly. So one of the plays you can do is Dark, steal something that they have. Because Dark is a Link 2, you can go into the into the Sprind. Sprind will send the Merly, and then you get your plays going. And the final card for the longest time was actually an Underworld Underworld Goddess, but I did replace it with an Appaloosa because there were just way too many hands where I would end up with a bunch of useless monsters on my field, and they'd already done their job, there was nothing else they were going to do. Being able to turn them into an Appaloosa was just the way to go, and since changing that to the Appaloosa, I have seen a lot crazier endboards in this deck, so I definitely think it was the right call, but that is going to be the extra deck. And there you guys have it, that is going to be my post-ban list Tearlament deck profile, once again without a Rise Heart really gatekeeping this deck. This deck feels like the potential is almost limitless, and again, if you take a look at all of the regionals and YCS Dortmund and all of the other big tournaments that have been taking place, you can see that this deck is definitely still a meta-relevant threat. Without the Rise Heart making sure that all of their cards are banished, you can just go off. Unfortunately, there is no combo tutorial for this because this is very dependent on your mills, but if you want a combo tutorial, make sure you are staying tuned for the next video because the King of the Swamp variant does actually have a guaranteed combo, so when I do that deck profile, there will be a combo tutorial for it at the end. You guys know the deal. If you liked it, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, like, comment, share with your friends, and do not forget to check out the channel sponsor Dueling Guard. Using code INSANE18, you can get 5% off your entire purchase. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.